Welcome to another episode of the Playful Lens. This is an incredibly special episode. We talk to the inspirational Bernie Smyth. Bernie is an incredibly playful person, and she inspired Gillian and I throughout the episode with loads of little nuggets around playfulness. She believes that we should have a playful attitude towards life. It's how we live, it's how we go about our day. She talks about how we need to value the process over the product, and she finishes this episode with an insight that is just going to stay with you forever. So we'd love to know what you think, and I hope you enjoy it.
Bernie, you are so welcome to the Playful Lens.
Thank you so much, both of you. Thank you.
We're delighted to have you chatting to us. Would you like to introduce yourself for our listeners?
Okay, so my name is Bernie Smyth. I'm a former primary school teacher, retired now, loving my retirement. But I also had the great privilege of doing some work with the Montessori College. I was head of special education in the Montessori College for a while. And then I moved to Freble and worked in SEN and did some work on assessment and language learning and maths, bits and pieces. So I'm sort of jack of all trades in lots of ways. And at the moment, I've just finished a series of supervisory visits for student teachers while they're out on their SEN placement. So I've had a very privileged teaching career, I have to say, and I've loved it, all of it. So that's who I am.
You definitely have. But Bernie, you're only pretending to be retired. That doesn't sound like retirement.
That's kind of, yeah, I am pretending to be retired. Yeah. I'm not tired, you see, yet. So that's good.
What is your take on play and playfulness, and why is it important to you?
I think I've loads of ideas in my head around play. So if I kind of go off on a tangent, please feel free to pull me back. But I think there are layers around play. Play, you talk about going out to play. Children talk about, can we go out to play? Or can we have extended play? Or can we have free play? Or can we have longer play? And I think about people then who play instruments, who play music, or who play football. So you have athletes and musicians and the creative arts. They're going to play with words. And for me, I suppose play takes both sides. Talking to my students this week, they would say that when children play, there is no judgment. There's no fear. There's a sense of safety around their play. And you can observe them at play and you see who they are, their real selves, not their anxious selves, or they're biting their pencils or they're going to pare their pencils to avoid work. But when they're playing, they're really in the zone, they've got the flow and they're chatting to each other and they're doing their colouring or they're doing their art and whatever it is that they're at, they're just calmer in themselves. And you get to see a side of them that you mightn't necessarily see when they're doing their academic work. But on the other side, for me, for example, I learned to play the piano, but I wouldn't consider myself as somebody who plays music because I don't have that. It creates an anxiety in me. And when I sit and I think somebody is watching me or listening to me, I get all anxious and my hands start to perspire. So I think that word play, for some children, I think play is work. And for others, play is freedom. So yeah, it's very interesting. It's multi-layered and it's multifaceted. And for teachers, it's about being aware of how every child is responding to the idea of play. And I think conversations that I've had during the week with students have been about the infants getting to play very quickly, the majority of them. But if you talk to fourth class or fifth class or sixth class, very often they'll go, "Oh, it's not cool to be playing. I'm not doing that anymore." But if you talk to them about it being an activity, it's different. But you have to be subtle about your language so that they feel safe. And it's about, I think, for teachers, it's about ensuring that every child knows it's a secure environment for them to be themselves and to relax a little. How's that?
Yeah. Sounds great. And you know what you're saying, Bernie, echoes beautifully what, Stuart Brown would say and what Dr. Joanna Fortune would say, whereas they would say play isn't about the activity, it's about the experience. So for you, as you said, playing piano is like, makes you anxious, but there's something drawing you to it. You're getting something from it.
Yes.
But for other people playing the piano, the exact same activity might be like, I don't want this to stop.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm
Yeah.
enjoying so much here.
I think it's about maybe I think it's about not feeling observed or not feeling judged, perhaps. I'm not sure. I think as we talk to children more and more, and I'm sure you'll think about this more in your own classrooms now as well, is you'll think about how are they responding? What's the emotional feedback that you get from them as well as they play and as they learn and as they, have a playful approach to life for themselves.
Important.
It is so
Isn't
important.
that so important? I love that. Have a playful approach to life. If we could instill that in ourselves.
And actually, that was so interesting this week. I asked one of the students, and she said she went away and she thought about it, and then she sent me a note later, and she said, "Actually, I was thinking about me as a grown-up student teacher." And she said, "When I was a child, I loved to dress up." And she said, "I haven't lost that because I'm still dressing up to go out." I thought, "Oh, it's
Yeah.
really good analogy that, like, you've kept that." And then she said, "And when I was allowed to go on sleepovers once I reached a certain age," and she said, "but I'm now living with my friends and we've sleepovers every night." That is such a great attitude to have, that she is really enjoying her student life because
Yeah.
she's still playing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she's still doing those things that bring her joy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So it's about it. I think maybe it's about carrying it through and having that sense of fun
Yeah.
Yeah.
as you go through, or seeing fun, even when, like, and that's, I suppose, an attitude that you need to kind of develop in yourself.
Yes, yeah.
Well,
And isn't it incredible when we as adults think back on, any experiences that we had, whether it's an extracurricular, whether it's school, we always think of the adults, the teachers, the coaches who were fun, and you think, oh, I love that teacher. They're so much fun, or we used to get crack in that. And we all remember the fun. And that's how learning happens then, isn't it? When you're
yeah.
enjoying it and when you're present and when it's joyful.
Sometimes even the fun things. I remember I taught an infant classroom, and I remember years later, a young lady came up to me as I was having my cup of coffee in the local restaurant, and she came up to me and she said, "Do you remember the time we were milking the cows in your classroom?" I was going, "Yes, do remember." She said, "That memory stuck with me because we were reading the book Farmer Duck, and I set up a milking station in my classroom, and I invited the parents to monitor the milking station. So we had rubber gloves, which were the teats, and we pierced the top of them, and we had tin buckets so that they could hear the sound, and they had to milk the cow in that particular station, but it was the parents who had so much fun. They absolutely loved having the children come, practice the milking, and then move on to whatever it was the next station as we were going around. If these are the memories that they hold for you, it's such a great thing to do.
Bernie, you are a creative genius. I was just going, how did you create milking cows in a classroom? That's incredible.
Was so much fun. It was so much fun. It really was. But that, like, when and you know yourselves from teaching infants as well, that the books lend themselves to the most wonderful activities. So, and Christmas as well is another really good time for decorating your classroom. I used to build an igloo in my classroom I just put the tables together and put a gym ball on top and throw a big, huge sheet over the top. And that became my library and all my winter books because they had to crawl in and sit with torches and read their books in the igloo for the reading station. So it was, experiential as well as everything else.
Absolutely.
That's so wonderful. That's so
Yeah.
wonderful. Bernie, what would you say to teachers of all ages, so of all age groups, who may be reluctant to bring that playfulness into their classroom and say, oh no, I'm not doing that. You'd lose control of them if you did that. What would your advice on bringing that little bit of playfulness be?
I think, no, I actually think a lot of it has got to do with your own personal understanding of education and learning. For me, I found that It the importance of making learning visible was you had to allow the children to be their best selves. This whole idea of making learning visible, that the whole program from the Project Zero program. And if you're looking to see the best of your pupils, you need to face your own fears So you have to kind of look at that personal, professional self and ask yourself, is it your personal anxiety around the control, or is it that there actually are students for whom you're not sure how they're going to respond? So it I think it's about taking tiny steps and trying one thing at a time, and not being all of a sudden I'm going to go in on Monday morning and my whole classroom is going to be a circus, because then you'll burn out really quickly. But if you decide, for example, maths is going to be my area of play, or literacy is going to be my area of play, or art, and take one subject maybe every year and build your portfolio of confidence around playfulness in that particular topic. You'll develop yourself. It was how I approached areas, the way every teacher has an area that they love, they feel confident in, like it's reading or it's maths or it's the arts or it's PE or whatever. But the challenge really that I set myself was to take a new subject each year and say, well, I'm going to improve in this area and I'm going to tackle whatever it is in small bites. But I would just do one subject and look at my improvement over the year, and then review it with a mentor. I would ask somebody who was really good at teaching that subject, can I check with you every now and again that this is working well? And I think that mentoring idea as well is really important. And I know that that's what you do on this podcast. You say, we'll support you if you need help. We'll back you up if you're running into bother. We'll find ways of encouraging a sense of bringing play into learning, or bringing learning back into a bigger picture, or making education that bigger picture of developing the child for who they really are, and allowing them to be children
Yeah.
for as long as they
I
can.
agree.
You
Yeah,
know,
I agree. I think mentoring is really important. And, obviously, as you said, that's what we're trying to do. But I do think it's so important to have somebody in your own school setting that you can just pop into and say, how will I fix this? Or
yeah, yeah.
this
I
is what
can't.
right now.
I have a really good idea, but I don't know how to put it into practice.
How can I make it work? Because sometimes, while obviously we would love to be that support for everybody, it's not feasible to send us a message and wait for the reply back. Or, sometimes
Yeah.
it's now we need that bit of mentoring. So I think if schools could do that, I think it's absolutely invaluable.
And I think your voice is so sound
Yeah,
because it's so easy to be overwhelmed with
yeah,
teaching. There is just so many demands. And I love it's on one, and
yeah.
I'm going to block out the noise on the rest. I'll get to those. Going to learn one subject and I'm going to check in with my mentor. How lovely.
But also for yourself, if it's something you're confident about, like if it's literacy you're good at and you're good at teaching, like you can teach reading and phonics and language learning, turn that into something more playful. Make what you're good at your strength, and then sort of siphon it down into the other subject areas. It's eating the elephant not in one bite, but in lots of little bites.
And I think people would find it easier. You might, if, as you say, do the thing that you're really good at, make it more playful. But it actually then becomes easier because you go, hang on, that makes sense now. I can try that in a different subject, in a different area. So I think people may find it a bit easier than they think they might.
Yeah, and it can be overwhelming because if there's all this pressure around, you must be doing play,
Yeah.
and kind of go, how do I approach this? How do I do this in a way that doesn't make my head melt? That I can just put in a nice game, or an appropriate, and it's finding the appropriate levels for the children's learning. It's finding the appropriate ways to engage them, and then it's maintaining that consistently through the year. If you decide you're going to do games in maths, and that you're just not repeating the same games, but you're actually finding games that will challenge the learning and will extend the learning, and that are cool for them to
Yeah.
play as well,
Yeah.
and are age appropriate and are inclusive of the diversity within the classroom as well, which is another challenge to take on board too.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
that's a big challenge as well.
It is. And I think sometimes, as you mentioned, the language of play, I think that because play has become such a buzzword at the moment, that people are nearly going, no, that's too much. I can't do that. The people are becoming afraid of it, but people are probably doing more of it in their classrooms than they give themselves credit for. I've had people ask me, how do you make that playful? And I'm going, but what are you doing already?
Yeah.
Look at your current practice.
And then you look at, I suppose, even if you look at the arts and you take the word play and you look at the difference between process drama and putting on a play where everybody learns their lines. One is very strict and structured, and if you forget your line, you're in trouble, or if you're standing in the wrong place, or if you don't have the right props, that there's a tension around that. Whereas process drama is about relaxing into it and role playing, and it's different. So it's about, I suppose, unpacking the word play as well, and understanding that when we're talking about it in the education sense, we're talking about as a process of allowing the child to develop, allowing yourself to develop, and using and ensuring that it's about engagement.
Great rule of thumb. If they're engaged, they're learning.
Yeah,
Because it
absolutely.
could be anything. If
Yeah.
they're engaged, they're learning.
Yes. And you're you're observing what it is they're learning, and it might be different from what you thought they'd learned, which is always interesting, because sometimes I know from teaching what your Walt is, we are learning too, is not what they actually learn at the end because they're coming at it from a different space. So when they're playing, you can see actually what it is they have learned, and you can come back and say, that's what they learned. That's really interesting. That shows me something different about them. And I see a new side of them. So to give you an example, I had an infant classroom and we were doing the story of the three bears and for the week, and we were looking at, and so on the Friday I used to plan my work so that on the Friday it'd be like a wrap up of the activities of the week. And we had made maths, we'd done our maths, and we'd done all sorts of things. We'd had a teddy bear's picnic, and we'd so then I decided to set them a challenge to make a new chair for baby bear out of whatever was in the classroom. So they had free reign. So we turned it into an architect's building, emporium or whatever. And so off they went to design and create their pieces of art. Talking about junior infants at this point. And so what I learned about their resilience, their stickability, their creativity, every child made a different chair for baby bear. And some of them, one child, it was absolutely hilarious. She wanted to use straws. She wanted to make a straw chair, but it wouldn't stand because she just had the surround of it because it wasn't filled. So what she did, without any prompting from me, she took it to a corner and she stood it in a corner so that it would stand up. And I thought, my goodness, what problem solving. That was
Yeah.
just so amazing. And another little one had, those Chinese food boxes? We'd gathered loads of those, and she stuck them together. And I said, so what are you making? And she said, well, actually, I'm making a sunbed because and then she covered it and she decorated it and she made a little pillow because she figured, and then she found a bear in the classroom and she put him on it. And that was her. She said, no, he didn't want a chair. He wanted a sunbed. But they were all completely different. They just used their imaginations. And I saw their ability to use fabrics and fiber and creativity and problem solving and maths. It was superb. It was so good.
I think that's one of the biggest challenges. That's what I found really hard as a teacher when I started playing, because I was so good at, when you talked about observing and all the lovely things that you were observed, I found that really hard because I was so used to the curriculum and a worksheet, and now I can see the learning. And when I was observing children, I was like, what am I looking for? I don't know how to, like, what am I looking for here? I found that so difficult.
And I think that says, for me, I think that's one of the things is that um, you have to keep a very open mind and you have to be open to the alternatives that they present you with. So it is hard to know because you can't, it's not like the spellings. You can tick the spellings when they're right, or you can count how many letters in the word they got right and score them out of You got, out of the word said, you got SED. So you got 2 out of 4 right, and, whatever. But it's much harder. You have to then maybe have the conversation and go, what is it you've presented me with? And how can I respond to that? And it becomes much more responsive teaching than didactic or or product based teaching. It's very much around the process of how they're evolving and how they're learning and what's emerging from their learning. So your mind has got to be much bigger, and the slate in your head has got to nearly be blank when you encounter them, which is very challenging, I think.
Yeah.
But that's good sound advice to start with, isn't it? If we don't know what to look for, and if we are like, I don't know what I'm observing here, to start with a blank slate and
Yeah.
just be curious
Yes.
and let them show you.
Yeah.
Or let them tell you in their way and then see how it matches with who they are as little people, or as big people. Even, the older children sometimes don't have the language either to
Yeah.
say what it is they're experimenting with, because we're very product driven as a
Yeah.
society, and we want to see results and we want to be able to say there are results. So the labeling thing is a big thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And sometimes observing play is a longer process because when I've got the worksheet in front of me, I can see now where the children are at, what they do and don't know. Whereas sometimes observing play, it could be 2 weeks, it could be a month, and you realize, look at where they've come in their language, look at how they're using sentences, look at how they're resolving conflicts. So it can actually take a little bit longer. And that's what we need to be open to as well. As you say, Bernie, it's not the product I have right now. It's where are we going?
Or even in play, and I'm conscious of this from a diverse point of view, their fine motor or their gross motor skills or their social skills, they're all, because as we grow as people, even, at this late stage in my life, I'm still moving forwards and backwards. I'm still learning and I'm still growing. And so I go, that's so slow. It took me a whole year to get to this point, or it took me, millions of years to get to this point. But for children, we want them to arrive faster than maybe they're ready. And it's about readiness and watching for that readiness and catching the light when it shines.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's one of our phrases, isn't it? We need to
slow
slow down and stop rushing them. Stop rushing their
yeah,
childhood.
But it's hard with the curriculum. It's hard with the amount of topics we have got to cover, if you like, that level of pressure. But I think again, I have to kind of go back. I found that very difficult. You know, you have to do a chapter of the maths book a week or whatever it is that goes on in your head. And so what I had decided to do in my own classroom was that I would look at the topic on the previous Wednesday, Thursday, and I would plan all my play activities around that. Whatever maths topic it was, I'd plan visual, auditory, and kinesthetic using those three as much as I possibly could. And I would plan activities. And we would do stations in my class. We do them Monday to Thursday. And on Fridays, I would hand them the maths book and I'd say, let's see what we can do from the maths book because we've covered the topic. We never used the maths book Monday to Thursday so that they would have experienced the topic and talked their heads off about the topic and had all of the arguments about the topic and looked up the dictionary and learned the words in maths in particular. I've a big thing about the importance of having the language and knowing the words by sight so that when they met them in the maths book, they would go, oh yeah, I know that word. So we played that in bingo last Friday. And, the teacher would read out the meanings of the words and I'd have to put the counter on the actual word. She wouldn't tell us the word. Those turning things on their heads so that it would be fun for them then to recognize the words in the maths books so that problem solving wasn't as big a challenge as it can be for children with maths anxiety, for example. But on the Friday, then I would use the maths book as the assessment because they wouldn't have seen it the previous 4 days. So it was a way to play around the topics until they were comfortable and then use the assessment at the end, use the book. But it meant I had to stop and think. I had to do the creative bit. And I loved that actually. And that was play for me. I'd be sitting there going, I wonder is there a good game around now for that? Has anybody got any good ideas about that? So it was great fun. My planning became more fun for me as well. Whereas for a lot of teachers, planning can be such a chore, you know.
Yeah, I
Isn't
agree.
that gosh, that would be a whole different episode. How do we make planning
Planning more
playful and
fun.
fun and creative and lean into? Because we're all so creative. We forget that.
Yeah,
We're all so creative and we stop using it very often as
Yeah,
teachers. 'Cause boom, boom, boom. Here's the book.
yeah,
There's, oh, wow, Bernie, that's
yeah.
really insightful.
yeah,
But you develop that habit, then you kind of go, well, actually, it's so much easier because they come into school, they're looking forward on a Monday to what mischief has been planned for me today. How am I, what's going to be exciting? Or who am I going to be sitting with? And how will my learning work this week? Or who will I be with for literacy? Or who will I be with for maths? Or who will I be with for art? So the social groups change as well for each topic because they know who they work well with and they're comfortable. The children then in your classroom become more comfortable in the space. And that's so important because for so many children, the classroom is their safe space, but for some children, it still isn't their safe space. And we're trying constantly to do that too. So that when it's safe, then they can play and be their best selves as well. Yeah, that's a whole other topic.
that is
Yeah.
another topic.
Put
You're
you in
giving
for
us
that.
loads of ideas. We'll have you back loads of times. Bernie, you've spoken about how privileged you've been in your career, and you are so privileged. And at the moment, you're so privileged to be going into other classrooms. Sometimes, as teachers, we don't get to see other classes. You know, you might pop next door, but you're not seeing learning and teaching in action. So you're in a really privileged position of going into other people's classrooms and seeing teaching and learning, you know, the real deal. Do you enjoy that?
It is completely such an honor to be able to do this, to go in and see, and particularly the students who are working in SEN, because they are they know they're so motivated and they're so caring towards their students. And for them, it's an extraordinary learning experience because they're out on a 10, 12-week placement, 13-week placement, and they spend 2 weeks. They spend a week of observation, they do 2 weeks of placement with their students. And because they're in small groups, it's life changing for them. And they will say it. They will talk about how this experience of really getting to know the children is life changing. Then they go back into their mainstream classrooms and they go, every child I've met in the small group and I've come to know in the small group, every big class is made up of really beautiful individuals. And so therefore it's it's wonderful to see, and then they get as well to experiment with games and ideas. And so it's great for me because you know how easy it is. You know, when somebody walks into a room and you go, I know what you could do with your hair, or I know what you could do with that dress, or I know what you could do. Because it's easy as an observer to have an idea for somebody else, whereas we don't see it often ourselves. But for me, I can go in and they might be doing really lovely games. I saw some beautiful practice this week from the students. And I go, I have another game I can add to that. So I'm constantly remembering ideas. And it's great for me because I go, oh, I have a really good game for that. You know, you're teaching fractions. I have a fantastic worksheet and they are going to love it. They're going to be able to eat the Smarties afterwards when they're finished or whatever. So it's sort of like going back on my own stockpile of resources and saying, I'll share that with you and I can give you this. Or so it's great to be able to do that. It's great to be able to encourage students, but also to get really beautiful ideas because they're diligent, they're digrasach, they're you know they're lovely to the children, and it gives me great hope as well for the future of education because there are such wonderful teachers out there and they don't get enough good press.
Yeah.
That's so wonderful to hear.
Yeah.
Can you come into my classroom too and give me lots of ideas?
I will anytime I would. But it's wonderful to see. It's lovely to see such good practice and even the students who are nervous or who are more serious, when they see the value of playing a game and how the child relaxes, they go, I should be doing more of this. They do see it. And it's wonderful. It's like I was saying at the start, the small things are what count. You make a
Yes.
small start and you go, oh, I could do this with a big group. Of course I could. The teaching practice is fabulous experience. Yeah.
Yeah. And are you solely in more infant classrooms, or are you seeing play in middle to senior classes?
I think I know that there's a bigger emphasis on play right up through the school, and I am seeing more student teachers looking to find ways to bring play into learning at a bigger scope. But as student teachers, they're working within the purview of their classroom teacher, and it very much depends on they don't want to change the dynamic in the classroom. If the classroom teacher is trying to manage behaviors, for example, and a student teacher comes in and causes absolute havoc, that it will take a while for the classroom teacher to get the class back. So I understand that it's quite a dilemma.
Yeah.
And for some teachers, managing behaviors and having play in their classroom is a big challenge. And that can't be denied either.
Absolutely, I agree. And for if you have a senior teacher who is not playful and who doesn't have that playful atmosphere in their classroom or playful approach to learning, it is, as you say, very difficult for a student teacher to go in and upend it all.
Later.
The class teacher has to,
There's the
go
long
back.
term consequences of that could be very disruptive behavior then, which will escalate. And the student teacher then won't be able to manage that because they're only learning those skills as they're going. So it's quite challenging.
Yeah.
You know, when you're visiting a classroom, it's all very easy to be a disruption in the classroom, which isn't the plan at all.
Yeah, that's the thing about teaching, isn't it? It's so diverse because each class is so unique and each teacher is so unique.
Yeah. You know, At the same time, I don't want to be disrespectful at all to teachers who know that taking a serious and calm approach. Some of the finest teachers I know were very calm, but their ethic was around fairness rather than having hijinks in their classroom, if you know what I mean. So it's keeping it calm, bringing everybody to a level where they'll learn well, and you have to read your class well. You can still play, but it doesn't have to be high.
Yeah.
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 You can play and have calm,
Yeah.
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 I
so
Yeah. Because I think people are afraid of losing control when they play. And as you say, it can still be calm. You
yes,
know,
absolutely. I mean, children can play really quietly together and have the best of fun. They're
yeah.
whispering to each other and they're laughing and giggling quietly. But it doesn't have to be, they don't have to lose the run of themselves either because they need to be able to self regulate. And that's also important. So I think play is bigger. It's even bigger than just having fun or it's just a really big word as far as I'm concerned. It's a really, really big word. But like in Howard Gardner's work, it has to be excellent, it has to be ethical, and it has to be engaging. So, you know, the excellence bit means meeting the needs of those children who need that regulation and
yeah.
or who need to be stimulated. There are some children then who are so tired that they need play to help them to learn as well.
And I love that you drew attention though to us honoring ourselves as teachers. If I'm a teacher who I like fair and I like calm and that's what I'm going to cultivate in my class, I think so lovely how you respect and you honor that and value that it doesn't have to be hijinks, that we need to honor ourselves in our classrooms and how we are.
Yeah, but it doesn't like serious doesn't mean not fun either, because some very serious people I know are the funniest people on the planet. They're just so
Yeah.
fun. And they are very, very playful, but in an understated kind of way. But it
Yeah.
doesn't mean that they're not enjoying themselves. So it's that there's room for everybody, I think, you know. Um, I was thinking about, if we're talking about play, we want to see that spark in the child, and we want them to shine like little stars, in our lives. Like our classrooms very often are like, to me, it's a bit like the Milky Way, or they're a bit like galaxies, and they're full of little people or big people who have energy themselves, and they just we want that I was reading today about nuclear fusion, as one does, on a Thursday, or one can when one isn't teaching in the classroom. But, the whole idea of nuclear fusion, what makes stars bright is that those particles of energy push each other around, but they create light because they engage with each other. And what we're trying to do in play, when we move children from that their individual play, their solitary play, into playing with each other, that cooperative play, that we want them to create light so that our world is better, I think. And so for me, play is about that generation of generating light and making stars out of our pupils so that the energy that they have within themselves, sometimes we need to tap into it. And we need to we talk in SEN a lot about removing the barriers, observing what the barriers are for this child to learn X, Y, and Z. And as the adults in the room, or as the set teacher, or as the class teacher, looking to find ways so that they can access their learning. And if it is to give them an opportunity to relax and play and be their best selves. So that's every child is the atom in your nuclear fusion. And you want them to release that energy that is who they are from the inside. So your classroom becomes light filled. Your classroom becomes a galaxy of stars, small stars, big stars, you know? So I think they're the kind of things, that's the way my head is thinking, you want them to twinkle like little stars.
So beautiful,
Yeah.
Bernie. Is that actually made me very emotional to hear you describe it like that?
Yeah.
It actually has, because it is so true. We want all our children to shine, don't we?
And
Yeah,
we
they
are
do.
so privileged that we are
Yeah.
in the position, the influence that we
Yeah.
have.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And we want them to go home with more of their own personal energy. We want them to go home at the end of their day feeling, I've had a good day. I've had success. I've shone today, and I think the whole idea of allowing them to see their growth, I think assessment is really important, our observation assessments and all the other ways that we assess them, but that it's important that they know that they have grown today. It's a bit like, the way that they recommend in meditation, they talk about, reviewing their gratitude or whatever, doing a gratitude list, that, that the children at the end of their school day have a sense of, yeah, I'm glad I came to school today because this or that. And I remember having a class and prickly, a little bit hedgehoggy. So, the old coming up to the winter that were a bit tired and crabby. So I decided that what we would do is we'd make an advent wreath and we would make it out of our hands. We cut out all green hands. And every time I I asked them at the end of every day to tell me something good that had happened to them, or some way somebody had been kind to them, or had been thoughtful, or some way they had helped somebody else. So we were talking about, ways we gave a hand today. So, see what I did there? Yeah. So when they could say, "Yeah, I gave a hand," or "somebody gave me a hand today," we stuck it on our Advent wreath and we then hung this outside the door, because all of December then became this big array of people giving each other a hand. And then we'd give everybody a clap because we gave them a hand. But it worked really well in terms of generating that light that I was talking about. And there was a kindness around. They were then dying to say, well, actually, I did this for my friend today. She helped me. She lent me her rub. Whatever it was that they did. And they learned then to think cooperatively and then play together well. They didn't fight with each other as much because they were trying to be nice. They were trying to be good. But it was all about, so it just filtered right through. There are ways of thinking about how to make your room brighter, or your classroom brighter, to make it work well, I think. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah.
It's gorgeous.
That's fab.
Absolutely fabulous. Don't come into my classroom in December because I'm stealing that idea. It's going to be done in the classroom.
That's okay. I'm sharing it. It's open.
That's a lovely idea. Such a
Yeah.
gorgeous idea.
Yeah, it worked really, really nicely. It was very kindly in the class.
Yeah. Yeah. So Bernie, if you had the ears of all student teachers, all school leaders, all curriculum developers, all parents, what would you tell them? What would your takeaway message about play be?
Okay. Okay. So here I have a prop. Okay. What have I got here? What have I got here, ladies? What have I got? I have an apple. Okay. So my takeaway is, do you know what this apple tastes like? No. Why don't you know what this apple tastes like?
Because I haven't taken a bite out of it.
Precisely. Okay. Right. So what I would ask people to take away is, you see, if you get a sharp knife and you have your apple, and you don't know what any child in your classroom is like unless you get beneath the skin. You need to find out. But if you cut it horizontally, what do you find in the center of your apple? You find a star.
I just learned something new.
So every apple, if no matter who you are, the teacher or the children in your class or the children that you have, whatever kind of bushel. Did you know that a bushel, by the way, was a unit of volume that is the equivalent of about 36.4 liters? But and apples come in bushels. Whatever kind of apple you are or you have or you're working with, if they're sweet, if they're sour, if they're ripe, if they're wrinkly, whatever, every one of them has a star inside. And our job is to find that star and help it to shine. That's my takeaway.
We cry again.
How are we going to get the whole world listening to this episode? Because it was just beautiful from
I-
beginning to end.
That's such a lovely takeaway message. That is,
Yeah.
it was wonderful. That's really
Yeah.
wonderful.
Amazing.
It's such an
Amazing.
important message to realize that even if your apple is sour, there is
Yeah.
a s- inside.
There's a
Yeah.
star inside, yeah. And that's actually really it's an important theme for me because, you talk about an apple for the teacher. If the teacher knows there's a star inside, we're good to go. That's why the apple for a teacher is really important.
Yeah. And they all serve different purposes. A cooking apple that tastes yuck makes the most delicious apple tart. It
But
has a yes, but if we don't give it, if we're not curious enough to figure that out, we'll
yeah,
miss it.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
What a wonderful takeaway, Bernie. That's
Yeah.
just beautiful. Thank
Yeah.
you.
So we're going to ask you a few 5 rapid fire questions, Bernie, after that.
I don't know how to follow that, but
Yeah.
okay.
Okay. What was your favorite thing to play with as a child?
So I was thinking about that. I was thinking I remember I got a Crawley doll. Do you remember the Crawley dolls from Donegal? I think I loved that. But I think my other favorite thing was a pair of roller skates.
Oh, yeah. We actually are both big roller skate fans.
Yeah.
They probably fell off a million times, but I loved my roller skates.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. We'll all get our roller skates out someday.
And I will fall again.
that's okay. If you had a stick to play with, what would it become?
I think it would depend on the context. It might be a toy for our dog Oscar, not wild Oscar, Oscar winner, in fact. It could be a toy for him, or I have been known to turn sticks into puppets, or I could be a hanger for my banners, you know, just hang things from it. Lots of things.
You're so
Amazing.
creative.
Yeah.
So creative.
Yeah.
So, Bernie, what is a playful habit that you've never grown out of?
I think I love coming up with different answers to things. I think looking for alternatives or finding another way to do something is something that I love. I love a challenge so that I go, okay, I wonder, it's like the recycle, reuse idea. I'm finding that so much fun because I think I don't want to throw that out. I wonder what I could do with that. That's a thing.
Once a teacher, always a teacher. We hoard
Yeah.
everything, don't we?
I know, yeah, we're terrible. It's absolutely shocking. Yes, I agree.
But it's good. It's good. And who nurtures or nurtured your playfulness?
Um, I have a wonderful group of friends who I meet regularly. We swim together. We sea swim. We meet on Mondays and we do crafts. I run a kind of a sewing craft group and we do that. We play cards. We cheat at cards. We do a lot of talking and chatting. So, and I think as a group of older women, we try to live out of a space of kindness because that's important, and we try to cherish the fact that we are lucky to have friends, under the circumstances. we tend to try, and I had run a number of courses on The Artist's Way. I don't know if you've come across Julia Cameron's book, The Artist's Way. I've run that a number of times, as it's a 12-week course, and it involves doing, creative tasks and writing poetry or doing collages and that kind of thing. So they would tend to be my support group.
It's fabulous. And you're so lucky to have that support group. What a lovely group to have.
Oh, it's amazing. Yeah, really, really good. Yeah.
And the last question then is, what is a small joy that you look forward to every day?
Besides my first cup of coffee, which I love, I think I look forward to, I try to do a little bit of journaling every day, or I try to review my day every day and count my blessings at the end of the day, or do that gratitude thing. I look forward to that because it gives my day a different color, and even if it's been a very grey, wet, cold, soggy day, there's always a good to take out of it, no matter what's going on. So I look forward to that. That's the thing I do.
There's always a glimmer, isn't there?
There's always a glimmer. There's always a twinkle.
There is always a twinkle. Bernie, thank you for speaking to us. What a wonderful episode. And you spoke about your privilege, but Bernie, it has been an absolute privilege for us to speak to you.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you both.
It's been so insightful, and you're so naturally playful. It oozes from you. And
Thank
I
you.
feel that. I love that. I love being around people like you, because I don't have, I'm trying to reconnect with that natural playfulness. And it's lovely being around playful thinkers, because it's like, that's what reignites the spark
Yeah.
in me. So this is it's such a brilliant episode, because you've given us so many little insights, and you've been so generous with sharing your knowledge and your time. And I think that apple metaphor is just going to stay with us
Yeah,
forever.
forever. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure talking to both of you. Thank you.
We really hope that you enjoyed this episode, and we hope that you found Bernie as inspiring and insightful as we did. We really enjoyed bringing you this episode. If you did enjoy it, we really would love to hear from you. We would love to hear if you try any of Bernie's tips and tricks that she has suggested for your classrooms, and in bringing some playfulness and light into your classroom. Make sure you share this episode with your friends, parents, and colleagues, and like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss an episode.